Freemuse recently published our book, Shoot the Singer, in Italian. And we had an introduction written by Nobel laureate Dario Fo. And in this introduction, he puts the question, how could you possibly put a song behind bars? How can you kill a rhythm, a ballad, a refrain? And his own reflection is that among all the possible aspects of censorship, music censorship is the most absurd. Now, my latest visit here in Istanbul in November was as a host of the Third World Conference on Music and Censorship. And the slogan of the conference was proposed by Shanar, music will not be silenced. The first report that Freemuse published in 2001, written by Professor John Bailey, was dealing with Afghanistan, and the title was, "Can you stop the birds singing?" Well, the good news is that you cannot stop the birds singing. Not even the Taliban succeeded doing that. And music will not be silenced. But the bad news is that you can put musicians behind bars, and you can silence composers, and you can't kill and bomb the messengers. Now, during the past months, an increasing Talibanization has taken place, not only in the southern provinces of Afghanistan, but even in neighboring Pakistan. Taliban, as you know, were probably the worst enemies of music in recent history. They introduced a total ban on music in Afghanistan with severe effects, obviously for musicians, but also for the whole culture. And unfortunately, this idea has spread very severely to neighboring country, Pakistan. What we see now is a new, very strong propaganda against music taking place in the northwest frontier. And unfortunately, this propaganda is even spreading to the capitals of Europe. And sometimes this propaganda, this religious propaganda against music, is even joined by Christian fundamentalists. You see this in Africa, sometimes supported by Pentecostals. The arguments for attacking music and musicians are the usual perverted interpretations of the Holy Quran and the Bible, that music is a tool of the devil. Freemuse, unfortunately, in 2006 and in the first part of 2007 could report on an increasing amount of attacks on freedom of expression for musicians, composers, and music life in general. Attacks that even include political censorship and censorship of the market. An example of censorship of the market was that NBC and the CW television network a few months back refused to air an advertising for the new Dixie Chicks documentary, Shut Up and Sing. Several country and Western radio stations refused to play their music because the band has aired its criticism towards Mr. Bush and the war in Iraq. We cannot claim in Freemuse that music censorship has increased. In fact, we do not know. But we've been able to intensify our reporting through small strengthening in our staff, and this has led to a remarkable increase of reports. We publish these at our website, which you see here, and the front page gives some kind of idea of what the focus is at the moment. Fortunately, Pakistan has delivered many of the sad stories. But there are many countries we don't know about because we don't have access to information from there, we don't have a network. Freemuse has at several occasions invited religious scholars to our seminars to discuss music censorship from a theological point of view, and that has led to new discussions amongst bloggers, media people, and even religious people in the Middle East. Probably a statement from Sheikh Ibrahim Ramadan al-Madini at our conference in Beirut made many people listen, because he said that there is absolutely nothing in the Holy Quran that argues for music censorship. In spite of this, these religious campaigns continue. At a recent concert and dance performance in Bahrain, the Lebanese oud player Marcel Khalifa was once again attacked by Islamist fundamentalists, this time in the shape of conservative parliamentarians in the parliament of Bahrain. But Bahrain is not Pakistan and it's not Iran, so a very strong manifestation against these attacks was organized by local artists and members of civil society. There are two countries that are singled out at our website. It's Turkey and Belarus. As you know, there are still very dark forces in Turkey who attack artists, including musicians. Ferhat Tunç has once again been threatened to death. He's on the same list as Hrant Dink was. Death threats also takes place in other continents. In Burkina Faso, just a couple of months back, a DJ received a death threat. His crime was that he is attacking the government in his music programs. But whereas our African friend does not have a strong network to support him, we are very happy to see that in Turkey an organization has been established to support artists against censorship, the SSS, and I know they're going to talk about their own work tomorrow, but I think it's very good news, and I think it can stimulate other musicians and artists in other countries to form similar organizations. Turkey and Belarus were also recently singled out in a study made by the International Music Council. The report was entitled "The Protection and Promotion of Musical Diversity," and it stated that musical diversity depends on whether there is freedom of musical expression, which is the first time I've seen that kind of statement in a UNESCO report. We welcome that very much, and we also welcome that other human rights organizations are now referring to some of our reports. We have seen a development where Amnesty in Germany, Helsinki Committee in Sweden are making use of our reports, and we hope obviously that we can continue developing this network with our sister and brother organizations in this room, so that some of the information we get can be included in their reports, as well as we are very happy to receive information from you. Now, of course, we all know the presentation time is short, so let me sum up that motives of music censorship, when you look at it globally, can be politically. We see that in North Korea, we see that in China, in Zimbabwe, in Cuba, in Belarus, just to mention a few. They can be religious driven, as we see it in Iran, in Pakistan, in Saudi Arabia, in Malaysia, in Afghanistan, or they can be linguistic or nationalistic, as we see it in Turkey. You can all look into our website to get a deeper idea about how music censorship looks like. We're going to print our next report. This is the latest one we did from Belarus. And the new one is going to look like this. It's being printed next week here in Istanbul. It's basically referring to the talks we had in Istanbul in November. It deals with censorship in countries such as Cuba, China, Indonesia, Ivory Coast, and Algeria. And I'd like to thank Janar for organizing the session we had with Turkish musicians here. It was a historic session, 12 testimonies. I think the youngest musician was 22. The oldest testimony was from a writer who is 86. And I think the best thing to conclude is to give the word to one of the participants.